Alrighty, today you're going to be performing experiment 7.1 where you're going to be doing several different chemical reactions and observing, looking for the 5 different types of signs that we talked about in yesterday's video as far as what signs of a chemical reaction are. So when you have your lab notebook set up for this is what I want to see. In your data and observation section, if you've already looked at the lab, you'll see that there are a number of different what I call mini experiments. And for each mini experiment, what you want to do is tell me which mini experiment you're doing. So in this video, I'm actually going to do mini experiment number 1 for you. And then underneath that, you're going to be writing the information that you see as you do each experiment. Now, if you do not have all of the materials necessary for each one of these mini experiments, that's okay. Do as many as you possibly can. The materials that I've listed there are materials that are readily available in the United States, but where you're living, they may not be as readily available. So whatever you're able to get, do those experiments, and if you skip part of them, that's okay. You're still going to be able to get to see at least some of the different types of signs of chemical reactions. So in this first experiment, we're going to be using 2 different liquids. One is lead nitrate, and so I can show you this bottle. This is lead nitrate, and if I turn it around, you can see that what's in here is just a colorless liquid. And then we're going to be using another one called potassium iodide, and that's in this bottle right here. And if you see where the bottle is, where the label is not, you can see that there's just a colorless liquid in here as well. And so in your observations, what I want to see is, what do the 2 things look like before you mix them together? And so I have lead nitrate, colorless liquid, potassium iodide, colorless liquid. And then what's going to happen when I mix the 2 of them together is going to be my 3rd entry under mini experiment number 1. So I have a test tube, and this just has some distilled water in it so that I can add a little bit of volume so that it's a little bit easier to see this. So I'm going to take the lead nitrate right here, and I'm just going to add a few drops of lead nitrate to this solution, or to the water. And as you can see, it's still a colorless liquid. And then if I take the potassium iodide and I add a few drops of that, don't have colorless liquid anymore, do I? You can see that looks like there's definitely something floating in there. It's definitely changed color. And so this is what's called a precipitate. A precipitate is what happens when you have 2 liquids and you put them together and they form a solid. So you can see that I can't see through that anymore, so that tells me that there's got to be a solid floating in there. And so that yellow solid that's floating in there is called a precipitate. So what I would write in my observations is that when I mix them together, it forms a yellow precipitate. Okay, so that's what your entry will look like for mini experiment number 1. And so now you are going to be able to go ahead and do, again, as many of the mini experiments as you're able to do with the supplies that you have available in your location. Have fun.